G'day, Steve here, Woodworking Masterclass, Part 2, second podcast. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone so much for the positive feedback that I've received. It is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I just really didn't know how it would be received or how it would come across, and we just thought we'd suck it and see. And apparently you enjoyed the first one. So here comes the second one. What I want to talk about this time is, previously I spoke about in the first podcast, can you make a living as a woodworker or making things with wood? Answer is yes and no. Yes, you can, but no, you can't if you want to do it the easy way. One of the other questions I get very, very often in the last episode I spoke about, people saying, what can I do that I can make money at? What can I make? How can I do something and turn a profit on it? Now, I answered that one as best I could. The second most common question that gets asked, and I guess not just of me, but anyone else that's a tradesman or working for themselves, whether it's an artist, graphic design, a potter, whatever, is how do you set your hourly rate? Well, I want to talk to that subject today. And as I said previously, these podcasts is a grumpy old man sitting down in his workshop, just letting it rip. I've got no script, I've got no cue cards, I just let it happen. So if we meander and get off topic and I go a bit quiet, that's just the way it is. But at the moment, I'm pretty excited, I guess, to share the formula that was given to me to work out my hourly rate. Now, this was given to me by a friend of mine who was an accountant, and he was my accountant. He was my friend first before he became my accountant. And he gave me a formula which I will show you later on in a spreadsheet form, just to give you some idea, and I might upload it separately onto YouTube or Instagram or whatever. So if you want to, you can look at it and go, oh, is that how it's done, or is that the layout? Now, bearing in mind, this is what I have used for, honestly, the past 40-something years to work out an hourly rate. And that didn't matter what I was doing. This was how I worked my base hourly rate. Now, I talk about a base hourly rate. I'll get into that a little bit later on, or it might be a different podcast. We'll see how we're going for time on this one. But there are times when you should stick to an hourly rate, and there are times when you shouldn't have an hourly rate. And we can get into that later on. But how to work out what to charge. It's quite simple. And what you've got to do, now this could take a few days, could take a week, could take a few weeks, could take a month, I don't know. But if you haven't got an hourly rate right now, it really doesn't matter if it takes a day or a month, because you haven't got one. But by the time you've done this exercise, you will have one that's absolutely spot on. And if you adhere to it, yes, you will make a living, providing you get people to buy your product or service, of course. So the first thing is your expenses. And it's going to be daunting, it's going to be frightening. I know when I first did it, I thought I can't be spending that much, but I was. So list all your expenses, everything. Now there's the obvious ones, there's rent, there's mortgage, there's insurance, there's a car, there's food, there's clothes, but there's so much more. So when you delve into it, okay, I said insurance. What have you got? Life insurance, maybe. Household insurance, maybe. Contents insurance, maybe. But then you've got health insurance, if you have that. And then you've got public and personal liability insurance, if you have that. And if you've got a dog or a cat, you might have pet insurance. And then you might have theft insurance for things that aren't in the house, but somewhere else. Anything to do with insurance, a premium that you have to pay, all these amounts that we write down are going to be annually, but at the moment I'll just list the things you've got to be thinking of when you make that list. And you say, oh, I've got a car. Okay, well, what's the car? Oh, Rego's $1,000 a year. Okay. What about insurance? Oh, well, we've already covered that. Car insurance. Okay, that's, I don't know, $700 a year. Then you've got maintenance. Okay, that's not a biggie for me because I'm a mechanic, I work on my own cars. But you put it in for a regular service. How many services do you have a year? Is there a major service? Generally, I know when I was on the floor, you'd have 2 or 3 minor services, and then you would have a major service. And the major service costs a heck of a lot more than the minor services. So you've got to put those in. Put in a couple of tyres. Now, you're not going to go through 2 tyres every year. I understand that. But if you have a flat tyre and you have to have that replaced, say the other tyre on the other side of the car is worn, legally that is unroadworthy because you've got one with a lot of tread, one with not much tread, and if you're in a wet situation or you brake hard, the car is going to react differently. So if you have one worn tyre, you've got to replace 2. Actually happened to a friend of mine the other day. He came to visit, and when he left, he blew a tyre out, and when he went to get it replaced, they said, oh, these tyres are so many years old. We can give you 2, but quite frankly, the other ones are old too, so you better have 4. So $3,000. That was an expensive cup of coffee. So I would put in 2 tyres in my budget for the car. Then you've got maintenance, you've got brake pads, you've got possibly a fan belt, you've got radiator inhibitor, you've got oil, and of course you've got petrol. We don't think of these things. So work it out. And whenever you're working it out, always go for the high side. Petrol prices in Australia here are absolutely staggering. They'll go from $1.60 or $1.59 up to $2.15 in the matter of a day. So it's no good saying, oh, I'm going to use, for example, 100 litres of petrol, which you barely do, that'll get you through a week, especially in the gas guzzler I've got. But $100, and you work that out at $1.60, all right, that's $160. But all of a sudden, petrol goes up to $2.15, it's $215, straight away you're $50 behind the 8 ball. So if you're going to work out your petrol costs, work on something that is good 10-20% above what the petrol is. And then if you get any unexpected trips, you're going to be covered. What else with cars? You've got headlights. Both of my front headlights blew the other day, and okay, it wasn't a big deal. $35 a globe, I think, so $70. And then when I changed that, true story, this one, my grandson was with me, and when I came back, I noticed that one of the reversing lights was out, so I had to go back in and get some bulbs for the reversing light. And then one of the stop lights didn't work, so I had to get some new stop lights. And then it started to rain, I turned the windscreen wipers on, and the blades had perished because you hadn't had rain for so long. So all of a sudden I went up to get a couple of headlight globes for $70 and ended up spending, I don't know, $150 or something or other. So these things creep in, and this is what you have to list in your expenses. Subscriptions. Have you got Amazon? Have you got Netflix? Have you got Prime? Do you have magazine subscriptions? Do you have a subscription to a club? I belong to various organisations, and there's an annual subscription to them. Anything that you subscribe to, you've got to write down. Clothes, not only your clothes. I'm cheap. I rarely pay more than $15 for a T-shirt, and I buy a pair of shorts for $20 and they'll last me for a long time. But if you want to have a uniform and you want to have an embroidered name in your company logo or whatever, how many shirts are you going to go through? Make allowance for a couple more because you're bound to get glue stains or lacquer or rip them or whatever. Are you also paying, and this is bearing in mind, this is if you're the main breadwinner, in the family. So you've got to think of your partner's clothes. Do you give them an allowance so they can buy their own clothes? And if you've got kids, You've got school uniforms, you've got sports uniforms, you've got scout uniforms, you've got, I don't know, life jackets if they belong to a Sea Scout brigade or whatever. Any item of clothing you think you're going to have to buy or replace. I do martial arts archery. Okay, I might need a new gi if I'm going to get graded once or twice. There's an extra few $100 for my grading. And I have to buy new coloured belts. Except for when you get the black belt, then you don't have to worry about it. Got a couple to go, but not many. And these are all items of clothing you'll have to buy. Socks, underpants, singlets, if you've got a baby, nappies. So they're the main ones you think of. And then you've got household expenses. Your wife or partner, whatever, do they do the shopping? Okay, how much do they spend? If they're spending $400 a fortnight, put down $450, $600. The way the groceries are going, it's going to increase. Electricity. My electricity is exorbitant, but I don't mind because I enjoy the comfort of it. But get what your electricity is, times it by 4. What else is there? Have you got someone that comes in and looks after your yard? Maybe a pool guy. You've got to put their expenses in. Maintenance of your equipment. In Australia, we have to get safety checks, what I call test and tag, every 6 months on any electrical appliance in the workshop, if your workshop is open to the public. So if you have customers coming into your place of work and it's open to the public, or you have students, every 6 months you have to have it tested and tagged. Most people that test and tag, there are some that'll do it for $3, but the rule of thumb is between $5 and $10 an item. I've got over, I worked it out the other day, there's about 150 bits of gear I have to get tagged. So that's $1,500 every 6 months. That's $3,000. So what I did for that, to save that cost, I went and did a course that cost me $750, and then I went and bought a machine that cost $1,600, and now I'm qualified to do test and tag. So even though it cost me, what's that, just over $2,000, I saved that in the first year. And I've had that licence since 2016, so you can see how much I've saved. So that's something else you can do, but again, you have to put it down as a cost. If you belong to a golf club, what are your golf fees? How many golf balls do you lose per game? They cost money to replace. Put that in. If one of your kids plays tennis, how much is a new tennis racket? All these things. If you've got chickens like I do, how much do the chickens cost to feed? Do you have to, if you've got a dog, do you have to take it to the vet? Does it have to have heartworm tablets? Does it have to have its shots? Every expense you can think of, and I know I'm really drumming this in, but there are expenses we don't think of that we do. I digress a little bit. When 2020 happened, my favourite coffee shop shut from 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock. And it's just down the road, and I used to religiously 3 o'clock, go down there and have a coffee. Now that coffee cost me $6.50. And then when 2020 happened and we had all the shutdowns, I thought I'll go and buy a coffee machine. And which I did, I think it was about $700. And what amazed me was I thought, what I'll do every time I have a coffee, I will put $5 into a jar. And if I have a friend comes around and I make them a coffee, I will put $5 for them because I would have bought them a coffee. And what surprised me, this $700 coffee machine I had paid for in less than 3 months. I didn't realise how much these $6.50 coffees were costing me. So put that into your expenses. What else? Maintenance on your machines. Allow for a couple of saw blades. Allow for a couple of bandsaw blades. Allow a few hundred for some router bits. What else have we got? Consumables, wood putty, sandpaper, staples, electric leads. Just put it all in. Okay, so you get the idea. You've got to be very, very accurate with these expenses. Then on another column, which you can see when I show you in the spreadsheet, write down the amounts. Now these are annual amounts. So if you are spending $6.50 a day on a coffee, I haven't got my phone, obviously I'll work it out. If you're spending $6.50 a day on a coffee, I know some clever people out there have already worked that out, haven't they? But, okay, what did I say? I used to like it because when I went there, I could read a book and I wasn't sidetracked by other stuff that had to be done around the house. Okay, if I bought a coffee every day for $6.50 in a year, that's $2,372.50. It's $2,000 gone in coffees. But you don't think about that, so you wouldn't put it in the list. So be diligent with everything. Write that down. And then with the amounts, put down the annual amount and again, increase it. If your rates are coming in at $500 a quarter, put down $550 a quarter. In my situation, I don't have town water on tank water, so when it rains, I get free water. When it doesn't rain, I have to pay for what they call trickle feed water. And boy, you can taste the difference. So make sure you're over it, because all of a sudden, if you have a drought, in our situation we have, and I've had excess water bills of $400, which I didn't allow for, but it didn't rain, nothing I could do about it. You have to pay the money. So go through there and add it all up, and you'll come with a figure at the end that will frighten you. I promise you, it will blow your mind. You say, oh, that's ridiculous, I can't spend that much. Well, you do. Credit cards, bank loans, money you might owe your mum, dad or a friend, store accounts, anything, timber yard accounts. If you're spending, I don't know, $200, $1,000, $5,000 a month at a timber yard, put it all down. So then put all the amounts down, and that will give you a total amount that you possibly are going to spend in a 12-month period. And this includes the entire family, so all the kids, the dogs, the partners, excuse me, and you'll say, I told you this is unedited, sorry I burped. Now the next thing you do is you've got to work out how many days you can work. A lot of people go, oh, I work every day. No, that's rubbish, you can't. If any of you saw some of my streams from 2020 when we started with the lockdowns, I wanted to stream every day to give people some normality or a connection and what have you. I did it for 57 days straight. I've actually looked back on some of those streams and I was non-compos mentis. I was totally not there. And in fact, Sue put a foot down. She said, you're not doing it anymore. And I think I stayed on the bed for 5 days or 7 days. I just couldn't move. So you cannot work full time. So what I do is I list the days that are going to be available to work. And the way I figure that out is, first of all, list all the public holidays. Now, I'm in Queensland, Australia, and we get 10 public holidays. Some are national public holidays, some are state public holidays, and some are local public holidays. But they are public holidays. Next, list the weekend. Generally, you're looking at 104 days, is it? If we've got 52 weeks, weekends twice, 104 days. Then list how many days holiday do you want. Now, working for yourself, you really are pushed to have the luxury of taking a month off. I'm lucky if I take 3 days off, but that's my choice. So conservatively say, I'd like to take 10 days off. And then you can have 2 holidays of 5 days each, or 3 holidays of 3 days each, or whatever. But you can do it without thinking I should be in the workshop. So, yeah, as I said, I'll put down 10, 2 blocks of 5. Then how many days, sick days, do you think you're going to have? And I know it's very hard, and given 2020, it's pretty near impossible to work out accurately. But if you're generally in good health and you get the flu 3 or 4 times a year or twice a year, then, okay, how much does it knock you for? 3 days at a time, get it twice, it's 6 days, whack another couple of days on just in case. So I put in 8 days for sick. And then I put BYC, which is beyond your control. Now, whether that means there's a power outage or there's a road closure or a machine's down, you don't know. So I think I generally put 5 days down for circumstances beyond my control in the foreseeable future. And that will give me, in the case I used in the spreadsheet, 140 days I can't work. Next, work out how many hours a day you can work. Now, what I'm talking about here is billable hours. I think the legal fraternity use billable hours. It's not how many days you're at the workshop. It's not how many hours you're doing things. It's how many hours a day will you be working and get paid for. And it will surprise you. It really will. I come down here, I'll do maybe 10, 12 hours a day, but they're not billable hours. It could be, I'm making something and I'm working here at the bench, doing some planing, or I might be at the saw, or it could be over in the router. Then, hang on, that router bit's broken, I've got to go and get a new router bit. So I'll then lose an hour going into the hardware shop to get a router bit and come back, or I might have to change blades. And if I'm changing blades, I'm not getting paid for that. It's not part of the job. It's non-billable hours, if you like. So anywhere from 4 to 5 hours a day, I think, is pretty reasonable that you can get paid for. I had the boys help me with something once, and I told them I'd give them this is my grandsons, I would give them a piecemeal rate, and they worked out how long it was going to take them to do this particular job, and I think it was about 2 minutes. I said, okay, you can do it in 2 minutes. Well, how many units could you do in an hour? Oh, we could do 30. I said, no way in the world. You cannot work flat out for an hour. Cut yourself some slack. Give yourself 1/3 off. So for 2/3, how many can you do? Well, it's 20 minutes. I can do 10. I could do 20 an hour. Okay, do it. And they did. They did 20 an hour, and they were okay, because we cannot work flat out all the time, even though some employers would like you to. So now we've got those main ingredients. We've got the cost of your living expenses for the year. And if you're going to go on holidays, put in that. Where are you going to go? Is it extra travel? Is it restaurants? Is it a hotel? Is it a motel? Is it a resort? Is it an overseas trip? You've got to have those prices in there. So that will give you a total. Next, work out how many days aren't workable. Public holidays, weekends, whatever. As I said, it came up with 140. So out of 365 days, subtract the 140. That leaves me with 225 days of the year I feel that I'm fairly confident I can work. Another one to put in, which I just thought of, is the break between Christmas and New Year. A lot of people you might deal with might not be there. So there's another 7 days that you might be able to do some work if you're well prepared. But if you've got to nip out to get something, you can't, because that business is going to be shut. So anyway, we've got the amount we spend. We've got 225 days we can work, and we're working 5 hours, billable hours, a day. So that means in a year, we've got 1,125 hours where we're going to get paid. This is the magic of the formula and how you work your rate out. You then divide your total expenditures by that 1,125 hours you're working, and it will give you a figure. In the example I've used, my outgoings were $91,550. I was working 1,125 hours a year, and when I divided that into that gave me an hourly rate of $83.80 or 30 cents or something like that. Now what I would do, I'd round it up to $90. So $90 an hour. The good thing about rounding it up, it looks better. People get confused if you say, oh, I work for $82.57. They go, what? Say, no, $90 an hour. Good thing is if you've got round figures, if someone gives you a quote or wants a quote and you can look at something and say, oh, it's going to take me 15 hours. Well, for me, straight away, 15 hours times 100, that's 1,500. Take off 150 because I'm $10 short of 100. So $1,350. Bang, there's your quote, straight away. And I know I'm not losing. So then you can say, plus we got materials on top of that. Anyway, that's it. If you don't like that formula, or if you don't like the answer that you've got, or if you don't believe you're worth that much, going back to my first podcast where I said we all know we're worth it, but we don't believe we're worth it, then there are things you can do. When I was growing up, we used to work 5.5 days a week. And that'll give you an extra half a day. Or if you like, it'll give you an extra 150 days. Times that by 5, that's an extra, I don't know, whatever that, what is that? No, hang on. We work an extra half a day for 52 weeks. That's 26 days. Divide that by 5, that's an extra, what is it, times it by 5. That'll give you an extra 100 hours. So if you divide that into, you add that onto what your hours you're working, 1,125 plus 150, 1,275. Okay, that'll bring your hourly rate down, if that makes you feel more comfortable. And the other things you can do, you can curtail your expenses. You can change the marketplace you're in. If you find you're dealing with people and they are only comfortable working with people that have an hourly rate of $25 an hour, move into a client base where they're going to be happy paying $90 an hour because they're used to paying $125 an hour. Yeah, so you can change a lot of things, but that will give you a base on what to say, okay, that's what I'm going to be working at. Now, I'll tell you a true story. I used to have I've got quite a nice hourly rate now, but years ago, I had what I thought was a good hourly rate. And then I met someone, and they, in my opinion, were far better craftsmen than I was. It would leave me for dead. And I found out their hourly rate was 1/3 less than what mine was. Now, bearing in mind, when I was working on this rate that I had, I was working 9 months behind, and that means I'd finish a job and I had 9 months worth of work in front of me to do. The interesting thing was I was in that client base, nobody ever asked me how much something was. They all wanted to know when they could have it. Now, if they could have it within 12 months, they were more than happy to pay whatever price I put on it. So I literally, many jobs, I just walk up, deliver the item, and they say, oh, what do I owe you? And I'd say, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Never a quibble. Now that came through. I was confident with my price. I was confident in my quality I was producing. I was confident in the results of my labour and my job. And I knew the clients were happy. But then I met this guy who was far better than what I thought I was. And he charged 1/3 less than I did. Well, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. He's better than me. I can't charge what I'm charging. I've got to charge less than him. Do you know what? I dropped 2/3 of my hourly rate, and my workload dropped as well. Because all of a sudden, I was measuring myself to someone else. Now, it's really interesting because they were charging what they were charging because they felt comfortable charging that rate. I was charging what I was charging because I felt comfortable charging that rate. But then once I saw someone doing something that I perceived was better than I could do, I thought, oh, I'm ripping people off, so I have to charge less than them. Comes back to self-belief. I don't have that problem anymore. So yeah, it is. It's very interesting how we sabotage ourselves and second guess ourselves. And the other thing I'd like to just quickly touch on, because we're nearly out of time on this one, is I mentioned before, when don't you need an hourly rate? Now, an hourly rate is your safety net. Providing you charge that hourly rate, you're going to be okay, providing you've got enough work, of course. And your bills are going to be covered. But I would say treat that as your minimum. Okay? Treat it as your minimum. Because there will be situations you will be asked to build something that costs way, way less than what they're being sold for. And if you say, oh, I can do it for far less than that, you most likely won't get the job, number one. And secondly, you're setting a precedent. I spoke in the previous podcast about I would prefer to give something worth $1,000 away rather than sell it for $200. Because if I give it away, those people are absolutely chuffed they've got something for $1,000. I feel good because I feel as if I've been really generous and I haven't cheapened my work. Whereas if I'd sold it for $200, I've lowered my own benchmark, and there is, I can tell you because I've felt it, there's a bit of resentment there because you have ripped yourself off and it's almost as if they're laughing at you. Anyway, so yeah, there are times you can go in and do a quote. My brother-in-law, he was an architect, and people would come in and he'd say, oh, what do you want? Oh, we want an extension on the house. Oh, okay, what's your budget? Oh, we don't have one. He said, fine, $3 million. Again, excuse me, how much? Oh, you do have a budget. You've got to. When I was selling cars, we used to call it educating people. People would come in the trade-in and think it was worth $10,000 and be lucky if it was worth $1,200. So it's good to have that hourly rate at the back of your mind so you know what your cut-off point is, if you like. And if you've listened to that other podcast, there is something I talk about. People generally take the middle ground. So if someone wants, I don't know, a sideboard made or chiffonier, you get more for a chiffonier than you do for a sideboard, but they're the same thing. Or credenza. You say, well, what's your budget? Oh, we don't really have one. Okay, educate them. Well, look, I could do one for $15,000. Oh, we don't want to spend $15,000. No. Well, you're not going to get, anything for $2,000. Oh, no, we want to spend more than $2,000, but we don't want to spend $1,500. Okay, so you have narrowed the playing field from nothing to infinity, anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000. Now we're starting to know what we're dealing with. In your mind, you can say, okay, well, I can look at that and I know it's going to take me 30 hours and I'm $90 an hour, so that's going to be, I can't even figure that out, my brain's tired. 30,000 is it? So 30 hours at $100, and that's $3,000. Okay, $3,000. Now my rule of thumb is materials are going to be about a third of the job. So if I say a job's going to come in at about $8,000, that means it's $5,000 for the materials. That'll give me $5,000 over the top. Quickly I can say, well, look, I can do something for around $8,000. And by the way, if you look at that, and I just quickly worked that out in my head, if you look at that, that's exactly what I was talking about. You've got the low end, the high end, and the happy middle. They most likely jump at 3,000, or they might say, oh, well, really, we don't want to spend any more than 6.5. It's okay, because you know you've got some fat in there to play with. And never be afraid of hitting them with a high price. I did some bedside tables for someone once, and it was a long story with the job. But anyway, when I delivered it, the people said, oh, would you like to know why you got the job? And I said, yeah, I'd be interested. What, if you, you know my reputation, or have you seen my work, or was it word of mouth? No, we got you out of the phone book, but you were the highest price. And we figured seeing you charge the most, you must be the best. So, it depends. Another one that I won't go into too much detail about, but this is when you don't want an hourly rate. I had a corporate job and it was a big conference table. And I'd never made anything this big in my life. It was to sit a lot of people. And I'd never made, only done domestic furniture. Anyway, I really wanted this job because it would be a feather in my cap. So I went around to a lot of office supply places to see how much boardroom tables were. Then I surreptitiously checked out a few other makers to see how much conference tables were. And they were all coming pretty steep. So then I thought, well, I'll go and see how much desks are. And these are chipboard desks, and this was solid timber. And I worked out, well, it's going to be equivalent to 25 desks, okay? And the desks are, $800 each or whatever. This is a long time ago. So that'll work out to that much. Yeah, but okay, well, I don't want... Anyway, I agonised over this. And, the other thing is, I will put in here, never say no to a job straight away. So, let me go and have a think about it. And I'll talk about that in a later podcast. But anyway, I went away and ummed and ahed and agonised over this. And I came up with a figure. And I went and saw them and they said, well, how much is your quote? This is back late 80s, early 90s. And I said, 25,500. And they took a bit of a double take and went, oh, how much? And straight away, the little monkey in my head went, oh, you've blown it, you were too dear. And they said, how much? So I repeated it, 25,500. And bear in mind, I was a one-man workshop. This was a big deal for me. And they said, oh, not a problem. We'd budgeted 45,000. Now, that was $20,000 I could have had a part of. So I quickly turned around with a smile on my face and said, oh, did you actually want legs and tabletops? Because I didn't include those. But anyway, I got the job and it's still being used to this day, which is 30, 40 years later, which is great. So don't be afraid of quoting big. Don't be afraid of asking. And don't be afraid of any job. You can always come back and say, look, I'm really, really sorry. I really thought I could do that job. And unfortunately, I can't. I don't have the equipment. I don't have the machines, this, that, and the other. And, you won't lose face. But go away and think about it. In the case of this large table, I had no idea how I was going to make it. And when they asked me initially, my mouth just went, oh, yeah, I can do that. And the brain's going, don't be an idiot. But my mouth ran away and I got the job and I did it. And in the process, I was talking to a friend of mine that had a large woodworking shop. And he said, come in and use my shop. I said, yeah, okay. And I went in and he was very gracious. I used his shop for 2 weeks and I think he charged me $300 or something like that. And I took him and his wife out to dinner. And I'll tell you, because I paid tax on it, and it's all finished now, but that job took 2 weeks to build. I made $18,500 net profit, and you'd think I was on the pig's back. No, what did I do? Look for extra work? No, I went and worked at my golf handicap for about 9 months, and then realised I was running out of money and didn't have any work. So if that happens to you, bank the money and keep working. The other thing I found out, interestingly to that, I found another chap in another capital city that was doing conference tables, and his started, now mine was solid timber and it was a huge table, and his started, I think his tables would have maybe sat 20 people, mine sat 3 times that. He was working, again, 9 months behind. He had 9 months worth of orders. He was working in chipboard, not solid timber. And his conference tables started at 69,000. And that's back in the late 80s, early 90s. So, yeah, don't be afraid. Work out your hourly rate. But if you like, keep that as the bare minimum. And remember, if nothing else, when you're working for yourself and people are buying your product, they're not, but if you're serious about what you do, they're not buying the product because it's a product. They're buying it from you because they like what you do. And that, my friends, is a premium, and that is what they have to pay for, and that is what you have to believe. And that is the end of the second podcast. So I hope you got something out of that. I'll show you the spreadsheet, and we can go from there. So here's the spreadsheet that I was telling about. Hope it's some help. Okay, list all your expenses, everything you can think of. Getting your toenails clipped, to the dog food, to machinery maintenance, anything like that. Always overestimate what you think it's going to cost, because prices will go up, they won't come down. Then work out the number of days you want to work and add those up. In my case, I think it's 140 days I'll take out of the year. Then your hourly rate, which for me, it's 5 hours a day I'll be working. So now what I do is I take away the days I'm not working from the days I have in the year. I times that by 5, that'll give me 1,125. I put my expenses for the year, then I divide the 91,550 by the amount of hours I want to work that year, which is 1,125, and that'll give me $81.33. If you want me to talk about anything in particular, let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can do. And if you're enjoying it, let me know. Appreciate it. Till then, this is Steve pulling the shed door down, saying remember to keep it sharp, believe in yourself, make stuff, be safe, look after each other, and God bless. Bye for now.